In today's show, President Trump moves to remove protected status for Somali immigrants in Minnesota. Thanksgiving week weather might prove challenging for travelers, and the top 5 cities where home values have increased the most since 2019. Plus, a controversial peace plan for the Ukraine-Russian war, what viruses do to queen bees, and what $2,000 a month in rent will get you in cities across the U.S. But first, today's trivia question. What was the name of the first magazine published in the U.S.? We'll have the answer at the end of the show. All of these stories and much more in today's Flyover Podcast.
Welcome to the Flyover Podcast, taking you above the noise for an unbiased, high-altitude view of today's headlines with daily coverage that's honest and refreshing. Let's cruise the news and land the facts.
Welcome to the Sunday, November 23 edition of the Flyover Podcast, where our crack staff of writers, editors, proofreaders, and researchers spends all day, every day, scouring the news so you can just spend 15 minutes finding out what really matters and then get on with your day. I'm Christopher Lyon, one of the editors for the Flyover emails. Amy Hess has the day off. This is an audio-only version of the show, so there's nothing to see here if you usually watch on YouTube. But there is so much to hear here, so let's get started with today's top stories. President Trump said Friday evening that he will end deportation protections for Somalis in Minnesota, quote, effective immediately, unquote. The move to end temporary protected status comes after City Journal reported that millions of dollars in taxpayer money were stolen as part of a series of massive Minnesota welfare fraud schemes, and that those funds may have been funneled to Somali-based terror group Al-Shabaab. In a social media post, Trump wrote, quote, Somali gangs are terrorizing the people of that great state and billions of dollars are missing. Send them back to where they came from. It's over, unquote. Minnesota is home to the country's largest Somali community, with close to 8,000 Somalis living in the state. Congress reported in August that 705 Somalis across the entire U.S. had legal protections. Next, a cross-country storm could create a challenge for millions of Thanksgiving travelers next week, with showers and perhaps severe thunderstorms across the central, southern, and eastern U.S. Thunderstorms could lead to delays at the busy southeastern hubs of Atlanta and Charlotte for a time on Wednesday. There is the potential for rain and snow showers along a cold front that pivots from the Ohio Valley to the Appalachians from Wednesday to Thanksgiving Day. The weeks after Thanksgiving could be colder and snowier than normal across portions of the U.S. Long-range forecasts from NOAA's Climate Prediction Center favor below-average temperatures for the majority of America from late November into December. Finally, in real estate news, of all the cities in the U.S., Knoxville, Tennessee, has had the biggest increase in home values since 2019, according to a Realtor.com analysis. The average home in Knoxville has seen its value grow nearly 86%, or roughly $190,000. The top 5 cities with the biggest increases in home values, according to the report, are Fayetteville, Arkansas, with an 85% increase, Charleston, South Carolina, at 81%, Scranton, PA, at 78%, and Syracuse, New York, at 78%. Over the past year, however, 53% of all U.S. homes have lost value, the highest share since 2012. Still, only 3.4% of new listings are priced below their previous sale price. Now let's look at some business headlines. The Trump administration is considering approving the sale of NVIDIA's H200 artificial intelligence chips to China. This comes after Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping brokered a trade and tech war truce last month. Next, Kia and Hyundai are recalling 335,000 vehicles in the U.S. because of an issue that could cause fuel tanks to melt. The recalls affect Kia K5 sedans from model years 2021 through 24 and Hyundai Sonata vehicles from model years 2020 to 23. Finally, Amazon announced that nearly 40% of its 4,700 job cuts in New York, California, New Jersey, and the state of Washington were engineering jobs, among the more than 14,000 layoffs announced last month. And here's how the markets closed last week. You could say it was a rough one. The NASDAQ was down 2.26%. The S&P 500 was down 1.65%. The Dow Jones was down 1.75%. And Bitcoin fell nearly another 10% at 9.65% to $85,090. Gold, however, edged back up 0.16% to a price of $4,076.70 as of press time. Now for our podcast extras. These are stories not included in today's Flyover email. President Trump said on Saturday that his administration's proposed peace plan for Ukraine's war with Russia is not a, quote, last offer, unquote, even as the White House pressures Kyiv to accept the terms by Thanksgiving or risk losing U.S. support. The proposal, drafted with Moscow, would require Ukraine to give up territory and drastically reduce its military, conditions that have sparked alarm among European allies. A top-level delegation is heading to Geneva for talks with Ukrainian officials, with a separate meeting planned with Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky's office said Ukraine is ready for quote-unquote constructive work, but he said Ukraine will defend its people and security. The controversial terms have been widely criticized in Kyiv as tantamount to capitulation. Next, a new report shows how housing space varies across America for renters with $2,000 monthly budgets. In New York City, for example, the report showed that as of October of this year, $2,000 a month would provide a renter with as few as 267 square feet of space. That's roughly a third of a pickleball court. While in Oklahoma City, that same $2,000 would provide about 1,900 square feet, enough for a 3-bedroom home. Other type markets include Boston, San Francisco, San Diego, and San Jose, each offering under 500 square feet for $2,000 a month. Meanwhile, cities like El Paso, Indianapolis, and Columbus delivered well over 1,600 feet for the same amount. Analysts caution that the data offers a useful benchmark, even as the actual numbers can vary widely within each city. And finally, about those bees. Recent research indicates that common viruses can inhibit the production of a crucial pheromone in queen bees, leading worker bees to potentially overthrow and replace her. The study shows that when the production of this pheromone declines, it signals the worker bees to begin preparations for a new queen. This disruption can result in a decrease in the hive's population, which in turn affects honey production and reduces pollination. Field tests demonstrated that adding synthetic methyl oleate to colonies significantly reduced the need for queen replacement. This finding offers a potential solution for beekeepers facing increased queen failures due to viral infections and varroa mites. Our sponsor for today's show is Cozy Earth. If you're a regular podcast listener, you've heard both Amy and Ayla talk about the great products from Cozy Earth, which include everything from sheets and blankets to very soft and wearable clothing for men, women, and kids. I just did a little Christmas shopping on their site and quickly found some perfect gift ideas that I added to my cart. Here are a couple of no-brainer options for the hard-to-shop-for folks on your lists. The bamboo pajama set is designed with a soft stretch knit that is set to drape beautifully and sleep cooler than cotton, making it perfect for holiday evenings and mornings, but also something they'll keep wearing all year long. Also, everyone will be happy to open the bubble cuddle blanket that you may have seen Ayla cuddling with once or twice on the YouTube version of this podcast. It's a simple gift to give and one almost everyone will be delighted to open. It has a distinctive textured bubble design and ultra-soft faux fur feel. And it's a mid-weight blanket, meaning they'll stay warm without overheating. It's made to feel good while you're using it and to look good draped on a couch or bed or an armchair. The good news is that Cozy Earth products come with a 100-night sleep trial with hassle-free returns and a 10-year warranty. The better news is that it's Thanksgiving week and their Black Friday sale is in full swing. The even better than that news is that you can bring the prices down even more by using the code FLYOVER, FLYOVER, at checkout to get up to 40% off savings. So head over to CozyEarth.com like I just did and finish up your Christmas shopping right now. Just click pause and do it. I'll wait. Just kidding. I'm not going to wait. I'm going to keep going. And now for sports. In college football yesterday, ranked teams mostly took care of business ahead of next week's rivalry weekend. Number 1 Ohio State beat Rutgers 42-9. Alabama bounced back from last week's loss with a 56-0 demolition of Eastern Illinois. Notre Dame destroyed Syracuse 70-7 in South Bend, keeping its outside hopes of making the college football playoff alive. In the SEC, Arch Manning lit up Arkansas as number 17 Texas won a 52-37 shootout, while unbeaten Texas A&M cruised to a 48-0 victory over Samford. Number 18 Michigan quietly handled Maryland 45-20. LSU is reportedly finalizing a $90 million contract offer for current Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin to replace Brian Kelly as the team's next head coach. Kelly was fired earlier this season after LSU's difficult run. I think difficult run is a nice way to put that. The San Francisco 49ers and All-Pro receiver Brandon Ayuk appear headed toward a breakup after new reports indicate the team plans to void his contract guarantees after Ayuk reportedly failed to show up to team meetings and communicate with team higher-ups during a rehab from a knee injury suffered in 2024. Finally, it's Sunday, which means lots of big late-season NFL action is happening today, including 2 heated rivalry games. The Minnesota Vikings are facing the Green Bay Packers this afternoon, as well as the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Dallas Cowboys. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Los Angeles Rams will wrap up the day on Sunday Night Football tonight. Every Sunday, we look back at something that belonged to a different era and ask, whatever happened to that? Today, we're asking, whatever happened to the electronics store Radio Shack? In its heyday, if you remember, in the 1980s and 90s, Radio Shack seemed to be in every strip mall in the country, often wedged between a dry cleaner and a video store. If you realized you needed a weird battery, a tangle of speaker wire, or a mystery adapter 5 minutes before dinner, you just went over to Radio Shack. It was the default tech stop long before anyone thought to just order it online. But it didn't begin as a corporate giant. Radio Shack started in 1921 as a tiny Boston shop selling radio gear to ship operators and to hobbyists who liked to tinker. Its real growth began in the 1960s when Tandy bought the struggling chain. Tandy stocked the stores with soldering irons, CB radios, and eventually, by the late 1970s, the TRS-80 home computer, the first real PC a lot of families ever saw. This successful period, though, led to a dead end as the decades went by. Big box stores like Best Buy and Walmart undercut Radio Shack on price and selection. Then the World Wide Web arrived and made online ordering of obscure parts just a click away, removing the chain's biggest advantage. Chasing growth, Radio Shack leaned hard into selling cell phones and contracts, a business already dominated by carriers and bigger retailers. The stores, still small and aging, began to feel cramped and oddly random, half phone shop, half junk drawer. By the mid-2010s, after 2 bankruptcies and waves of closures, the once ubiquitous brand had faded into a handful of remaining retail outposts and a nostalgic URL, a relic of a more hands-on, analog version of tech. Did you love Radio Shack in its heyday? Leave a comment below and tell us what you loved about it. Here are a few more headlines that didn't quite fit anywhere else. Police have identified 3 suspects in a North Carolina shooting that sent 4 people to the hospital during a Christmas tree lighting ceremony in Concord on Friday night. Authorities say it was not a random act of violence. Nigerian officials now say armed men abducted 303 children and 12 teachers from a Catholic school in the country's northwestern region on Friday, which is significantly more than originally reported. Colombian authorities say sniffer dogs helped uncover 14 tons of cocaine at the nation's main Pacific port. It's the country's largest drug bust in a decade. A recent study finds that Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Vermont are the most expensive states to raise a child, while Mississippi and Alabama are the least costly. Transportation officials say a rogue weather balloon was the mystery object that shattered a United Airlines jet's windshield at 36,000 feet over Utah last month. Finally, a new documentary on Amazon Prime called The Age of Disclosure claims former President George H.W. Bush knew about extraterrestrial life and an alleged meeting between aliens and U.S. officials. Now it's time for poll position, where we turn the microphone over to you. In yesterday's poll, we asked this. If you had to choose one of these two cities to live in, which would you pick? LA or NYC? Of course, we asked knowing that many of you would rather not live anywhere near either of these huge coastal cities. We asked knowing that the idea of actually packing up and moving to one or the other might suggest to you that you had made some terrible life choices. Still, many of you played along, imagining that all other options had been removed from the earth, and 60% of you said Los Angeles, while the other 40% said you'd rather move to the Big Apple. In the end, we just hope you're thankful for wherever in the world you are planted today. Today's poll question is much less traumatizing, potentially. When you gather for Thanksgiving meal, do you dress up or do you keep it casual? Your options are dress up, casual, or the comfier the better. I'll be curious to see your responses to this one. We Lions from Nebraska are an unassuming people. We do not dress up for Thanksgiving. We usually wear something Mom would call decent. Put something decent on and come to dinner, she might say. Finally, here is the long-awaited answer to today's trivia question. What was the name of the first magazine published in America? All the bonus points for you if you got this one without looking. The first American magazine was called American Magazine. Now I bet you feel silly. It had an alternate title of, quote, Monthly View of the Political State of the British Colonies, unquote. That might give you a hint as to when it was published, in 1741 by Andrew Bradford. 3 days later, Benjamin Franklin published the second American magazine called, quote, The General Magazine, an historical chronicle for all the British plantations in America. Catchy. Both magazines ceased publication within a few months. They just could not compete with the internet. That's it. That's all we've got for you. Thanks for flying with us today. We know you have a choice in news podcasts, and we're glad you chose ours. I'll be back with you tomorrow, filling in for Ayla Brown on Monday's edition during this Thanksgiving week, and we will be very grateful if you join us.